Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 129 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about you, man?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
We are having a great night of recording so far.
We are, man.
We did our video weekly Patreon
Yeah, we did.
thing. We just got done recording the new True Crime All the Time,
Yeah, it was good.
which is about David Copenheffer.
Yeah,
It's got some local ties to you and I.
it sure did.
And I think it's an episode that people are really going to enjoy. It's multifaceted. It's got an unsolved case tied to this guy,
It does.
as well as a solved case.
Yeah.
So a little different there.
It will keep you entertained.
It will. It should. We had some new Patreon supporters. So let's give some shout outs.
All right.
We had Christine Martin,
Hey, Christine.
Adam,
Adam.
Holly Moore,
What's up, Holly?
Virginia,
Hey, Virginia.
Neil,
Thanks, Neil.
Lori Hurley,
Hey, like the Hurley fashion wear skateboard. No, what is it? Hurley. Why'd I do that?
Elizabeth Hurley is the only person I can think of.
Oh, she's nice. Yeah.
She's nice. Do you know her personally?
Yeah, she's a good person.
We had Julie Foy,
Hey, Julie.
Christy Russell,
What's up, Christy?
Amy Burt.
Hey, like burnt? Like sizzle?
No, like Burt.
Oh, like Burt Reynolds?
No, like Burt and Ernie.
Burt and Ernie.
Yeah.
I gotcha. All
Or
right.
Burt Reynolds is a good one too.
All right.
Rachel Gray,
Hey, Rachel.
Liz Daniels,
What's up, Liz?
Holly Barnes,
Hey, thanks, Holly.
Emily Ambergy,
Ambergy.
Linda Camargo.
Ooh, Camargo. We're in San Diego.
Where in the world is Carmen San Diego? Is that what you were
That's
trying
where I was
to
going.
say?
Yeah.
We had Michelle Kresge,
Hey, Michelle.
Ruthie Whitaker,
What's up, Ruthie?
Grace Coravoy,
Quarterboy.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tisley Taylor,
Hey, Tisley.
Sean Stengel,
What's going on, Sean?
Rachel Toddy,
Hey, you Toddy.
Cold Case Investigators,
What's up, Cold Case?
which I believe is a podcast.
Yeah.
Sana Joanna Nevalainen,
Never Lanin.
Kayla Sanso,
What's up, Sanso?
and Andrew Roy.
Thanks, Andrew.
So we appreciate all that new support. And then if we go back into the Vault Gives,
Yeah.
this week we selected Jeffrey Bolak.
Jeffrey from France.
I keep thinking I get the name is French, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's from France or he's French.
Might be.
We had some great PayPal support as well. Ted Perry,
Oh, Ted, buddy.
our buddy in Arizona, Jessica Metz,
Hey, Jessica.
Breda Hale,
What's up, Breda?
Daniel Javier,
Hey, Javier.
and Kate Massey.
Hey, Kate. Thank you.
Yep. So awesome support all the way around. Make sure you check out our new podcast. The reviews are in.
Yeah.
New episodes every Tuesday morning.
Give it one try, man. Get
Got
after
to.
one try.
Got to give it a shot.
One time.
We had some really great feedback, Gibbs, on our first ever full-length episode that we put out on video on Patreon.
Yeah, they did not like your wardrobe?
No, I said we had some good feedback.
Oh, okay. Just making
no,
sure.
people really seem to like to see how a full episode is done.
Yeah. Were they impressed?
Some people were.
Yeah.
There were some comments that they couldn't believe I didn't look at the computer as much as I did. You know, but it's one thing you and I have always tried to do. We try to look at each other because we want it to be a conversation.
Right.
So
They weren't impressed that I didn't look at my computer as much as I didn't.
during the 3 minutes that you talked, I don't know if they noticed or not.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I'm just messing with you. But it is a formula that has worked well for us.
Sure.
It also leads to sometimes messing things up.
Occasionally.
Case in point, the last unsolved episode.
Yeah.
I may have called the body farm guy Bill Blass.
Yeah,
Blast from the past. I think wasn't that a designer brand back in the day?
Bill Blass?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know. You got all his ties upstairs.
I really wasn't sure what it was. I just remember it being some type of clothing,
Yeah.
wear, something. But we do make mistakes, and everybody knows that. People love to point it out, and we love it. We love getting the emails.
Yeah, we're good with it.
All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into a brand new episode of Unsolved?
I am.
We are talking about the unsolved murder of Michelle Norris. This occurred in 1988, and we're going to Rhode Island.
Yeah.
I believe this is the first case we've ever done in Rhode Island.
I believe so too. I was trying to think, we've done so many between the two podcasts. It
is getting hard to keep track.
It really is. But yeah, I think this is the first one in Rhode Island.
So I mentioned 1988. Before we get into the events that occurred in May of that year, we first want to talk about Michelle Norris. Michelle was born on April 28th, 1981. So Gibbs, she was only 7 years old in 1988. She was described as a fairly shy girl, but very sweet to everyone that knew her.
Yeah.
She had jet black hair. She was very soft-spoken, and she had an incredible smile.
Oh, she really did. Very contagious. The pictures out there that you see of her, it's just one of those very contagious smiles.
Meaning if you saw her smile, it would make you want to smile as well.
Absolutely.
I know people like that have just such an amazing smile. You can't help feel better after seeing it.
Right.
Michelle was in the first grade. And from everything you read, she loved school. And it's kind of hit or miss, right? With kids that age.
Yeah.
They either love it or they can't stand it. I was pretty lucky. Both my girls really liked school for the most part.
Right.
Growing up and, even through to high school with my oldest. And my youngest is now in high school. She loves it. My daughter, who just went to college, she loves it there. So, I think when you love to learn and you love to be around people and meet new people, that makes a big difference.
I mean, I loved it so much, I repeated it a couple.
I loved it so
once.
much, I did it twice.
Yeah.
I'm not only a customer, I'm the president.
That's exactly right.
Is that how that went?
Something like that. Yeah.
But everything was not rosy for Michelle Norris. She grew up in a fairly rough area of Central Falls, Rhode Island, and life at home was not always easy for her, or for that matter, Gibbs, her 3 brothers.
Yeah. Yeah. They didn't have the easiest life. That's for sure.
There have been a lot of allegations that Michelle's father was an alcoholic and that he was abusive towards his wife, Michelle's mother, but it didn't stop there. These allegations center around the fact that he was abusive at times to Michelle as well. But Gibbs, we've talked about it a lot. Abusive alcoholics, there tends to be a lot of fighting.
Oh, yeah.
In the household between the parents. It's not a good situation.
No.
Now, I have known some alcoholics in my life, throughout my life, that were I guess what you'd call functional alcoholics.
Yeah.
They drank to excess, but they were good family guys. They got up and went to work. They never missed work. But I think that is not the norm.
No, I think you're right. I mean, like you said, I have a close friend that is exactly that, very functional. But then I had some friends' dads that, man, you didn't want to be in that house.
When they were drinking.
Absolutely. Did not want to be around.
And I always feel bad when, we do these types of cases where there is a child that is brought up in this situation because, number one, they didn't ask for this.
Right.
And number two, they have no control. A 7-year-old can't say, I'm going to put an end to this, or I'm going to change my situation in life. They got no power.
No, they're stuck.
They have to deal with what's going on.
Yeah.
Unless somebody from the outside steps in and says, you know what, I'm going to take care of this situation for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Be it Child Protective Services or something like that.
Yeah.
One detective later told a local paper that Michelle had a horrible life. The kids were dirty most of the time. They didn't get enough food. They didn't get washed. This guy was called out to the house a number of times.
And you hate to hear that. You hate to hear that kids are going hungry. You hate to hear that, that
they're not even getting a bath.
Yeah, they're not clean. They got days worth of dirt on them, the odor, the hair not clean. It's just
kids get dirty.
Yeah.
They play outside a lot. Michelle's mother has said that she was severely ill during this time frame. She was bedridden a lot of the time, couldn't work, couldn't go to the store, couldn't clean, essentially couldn't take care of her kids.
Yeah, so it makes it rough, when you have 4 kids, young kids that need attention, and your spouse is drinking all the time.
And you're not able to do what you need to do. Gibbs, I don't think severe alcoholics are known for their ability to pitch in around the house.
Don't think they probably have the organizational skill.
And I don't think they care.
No.
All they care about is, where am I going to get my next drink? Now, obviously, I'm painting with a very broad brush here, but I think when you get to a level of alcoholism, it's, similar to drug addiction.
Yeah.
There becomes a point where all you care about is where you're getting your next drink, your next hit, your next high.
You're not going to be functional. You're just doing what you need to numb yourself from whatever is causing you that internal pain.
And what probably backs up that point as it relates to Michelle's dad, William Norris, was that he left the family, left her mom, left her brothers in December of 1987. He moved in with his mother just a few streets over from where they lived. So Gibbs, this marriage is ending. Julie Norris, Michelle's mom, was 32 years old. William was 26 years old. Julie's mom, Michelle's grandparents, lived across from the school, and they would try to help out Julie and the kids the best they could. But even that wasn't enough, because after a child welfare check, the kids were removed from the home. This was May 27th, 1988. The kids were placed with Julie's parents.
I would think they'd want them in a stable, clean environment.
Well, they have to get them out of the environment they're in. Have to, right?
Yeah.
That's priority number one.
Yeah.
Child protective services, child welfare, whatever you want to call it, goes to this house. Probably didn't take them long to figure out this is no place for any of these kids. And there's 4 of them to be raised. They can't live here day in, day out.
No, they need a place they can lay their head down at night where they're safe.
So they check out the grandparents. The grandparents have it going on.
Yep.
We'll put them there. But it's not like the grandparents live that far away, right? The kids could go back home to see their mom pretty much whenever they wanted. And it sounds like from the research that they did.
Yeah.
On Saturday, May 28th, this is the very next day, right after the kids have been removed from their home. Michelle asked her mom if she was okay to go with her brothers to the park and play.
That's what all kids like to do, man.
Well, who doesn't like to go to the park?
Yeah. Now, this is back in the late 80s. We didn't have all the stuff the kids had today. We played in the parks, man.
I also think it's an important distinction to make. This is the day after Child Services has taken those kids out of the house. The very next day, they're back. Whether it was just to hang out for a while.
Right.
But she's asking her mom for permission to go to the park. So
yeah,
it's almost like we're back.
Yeah. Well, she still is the mom.
She is the mom.
Yeah.
But Child Services has said, right now, you can't really be the mom because you're not being the mom.
Yeah. You're not fit.
It's a strange situation because they can make the decision to remove the kids.
Right.
But how are they going to enforce whether or not the kids go back, stay there for nights? There's no way to enforce it.
Well, that's really...
They can't go out there every day.
Well, you're going to put a security guard, somebody that's going to enforce it 24/7 now.
So Julie wasn't feeling well that day. She told Michelle, sure, you can go to the park, be safe, stay with your brothers. You know what? Even ask your cousin to go along, but just make sure that you tell your grandparents. So the kids all walked to the nearby school playground. The school was Captain G. Harold Hunt School. Captain
Hunt must have been a pretty important guy back in the day.
It wasn't that far. It was located on Kendall Street. There were some other kids there at the school playing. This was Memorial Day weekend, right? So we get an extra day. It's a long weekend.
And the school was right across the street from the maternal grandparents' house.
So at some point, as they're on the playground, some of the older kids decided that they wanted to leave and go to the candy store.
Oh, man, I loved the candy store as a kid.
Who doesn't love the candy store?
Yeah.
I love the candy store now.
We had a candy store called Granny's Candy Store.
We have one in the city that I live in downtown called Grandpa Joe's.
Grandpa Joe's, huh?
I think that's what it's called.
Really?
Grandpa's candy store. Grandpa something.
Yeah.
They have everything. They have that old candy that you can't find.
Yeah. That sounds like Granny's, man.
It's good
I
stuff.
used to love going in there.
But Michelle didn't go, right? She stayed behind with her little 4-year-old brother and her 5-year-old cousin. This already sounds like a very strange situation. Michelle's 7 years old,
Yeah.
essentially in charge of a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Yeah. I get you. I mean, it's like a first grader and preschool kids, right? That's kind of young.
It's a tough situation.
But this is probably a little bit different environment. Maybe the kids have to grow up a little faster, when you're in a...
You got to grow up fast when you're essentially taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Michelle's grandmother called all of the kids to come in for the night to eat dinner. Again, remember, they live just across from the school. The kids started to file into grandma's house. Michelle wasn't there. Not a single one of the kids knew where Michelle had gone to. So I think as any grandmother would, she panicked.
Absolutely. Freaking out.
And she called her adult sons to have them come over to help look for Michelle.
Yeah. Get over here, boys. We got to find her.
So these would be Michelle's uncles.
Yeah.
And they're checking the playgrounds. They search the schoolyard. They walk the neighborhood. The other thing they do is they pay a visit to Michelle's dad, William Norris.
Yeah.
And they ask him if he knew where Michelle was. He told them he didn't. But the thing about it is that Michelle's uncles would later say, this guy didn't even act like he was concerned in the slightest, Gibbs, that his 7-year-old daughter was missing.
Yeah, he didn't even try to help, to look.
Yeah. Well, I got a 40 over here. I can't leave and go look for my biological daughter.
She's probably with a friend. She'll turn up. Don't worry.
You wonder what kind of deductive reasoning goes through some of these people's heads.
Yeah.
My assumption is not a whole lot.
I just would think if I was drunk and somebody came in and said, your kid is missing, you know how you can sober up pretty damn fast sometimes? That's something that would probably sober me up.
Well, that's sobering news.
Yeah.
To hear that your daughter's gone missing.
Yeah.
What you would not do is say, doesn't seem like a big deal to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back and watch the People's Court and finish off this 40 of Old English. That's what you would not do.
Right.
So we talked about the fact that the family was searching for Michelle. Other people from the city joined in. There was a lot of people, Gibbs, out looking for this missing 7-year-old girl. I talked about it already, right? Her brothers, her cousin, other kids that were at the playground, they didn't know what happened to Michelle. They couldn't say that she went off with someone, she walked this way or that way. It was almost as if she disappeared. They had no idea.
Yeah, like thin air, man. Just like that.
Michelle's family reported her missing that day after searching for Michelle with no luck.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were hoping that she just simply walked off playing somewhere or went with another friend, or maybe she went back to check on mom. But no, that she was just nowhere to be found. No traces. Well,
and I think you and I have discussed this before, but as a parent, a lot of us go through some version of that.
Yeah.
In our lives as we're raising our kids. Now, it could be as simple as you're in a department store, you're in an aisle, you turn around, your child's gone, but you find him in the next aisle over. It's still a very sinking feeling. It just doesn't last that long because you find them very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, your heart races and, man, you are just scattering.
Yeah, you're running around. I'm knocking down stockmen.
You're knocking down grandmas. I know you.
If I had to save my children, I probably would. I hate to say that, but
yeah.
I think in a situation like that, that first thought has to be pretty much what you said. Okay, she's walked off. We'll find her.
Right.
Let's search. We're going to find her very quickly. But I think at a certain point, and I don't think that amount of time really stretches that far, you have to start to really panic and think, we have to call the police.
Yeah.
We can't wait. Bad things happen when you wait too long.
And we know that, right? We've done enough of these cases that we know the clock is ticking, and most kids missing, I think it's within the first 48 hours, will most likely be found dead.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact time, but yeah, bad things happen within a certain amount of time in a lot of these cases.
Yeah.
When police talked to Michelle's mom, she told them that Michelle would never go with anyone that she didn't know.
No, because we said early on, she was shy.
Sure.
You know, and
she made friends, but she wasn't gregarious and I'll go up and talk to anybody.
Right.
A lot of people that we've profiled and talked about, they were like that.
Sure.
They could make a friend anywhere they went. They would talk to anybody. I don't think Michelle was quite like that.
Right.
She was more introverted, more shy. So when the police get involved and they start their investigation, they began to look into Michelle's father, William. And I think pretty quickly, he became a person of interest. So when they talked to William, he gave them an account of his actions that day, an alibi, if you will. But the police really don't know much, right? In the very early stages of this investigation, they know that Michelle and these other kids were playing hide and go seek at the playground.
Yeah.
They know that the playground was in sight of their grandparents' home.
Right.
And then just like that, Michelle was gone.
That's it. That's all they know. It's hard to find somebody based off that information alone.
Well, very hard.
Yeah.
That is not much to go on at all.
It's hard to get started.
And we talked in the beginning. Michelle had a very tough family environment to grow up in. But I don't think you can cast that widely across the area of Central Falls.
I think Central Falls was one of those tough towns. You know, I think people had a hard way of making a living, but I think that they took care of each other, took care of their own. And in Central Falls, you have a lot of families, generations, you know, like we said, William's mom just lived down the street. Julie's parents lived down the street. Her brothers lived in the neighborhood. Everybody was pretty contained in this same area where they have stacks of row houses, apartment buildings. It's very close quarters. And we know Rhode Island's, I mean, it's not a very big state. In Central Falls, you have all these people just stacked on top of each other. But one thing that the community has said in a lot of the articles I read is that they look out for each other. They look out for the kids in the community. You know, the kids should be able to feel safe from walking out of their apartment or their building to go to school or go to their soccer match or whatever, that they don't need to worry about some stranger coming in town and doing anything to them.
So Gibbs, you talked about, you know, the density of population, how this community kind of looked out for their own. I think the strange thing about it is after talking about all of that, not a single person saw where Michelle went or what happened to her that day.
No.
This is not what you would call a rural area where things are spread out. These houses are close together. It's dense. You would think somebody would have seen her.
Yeah, people are going to be on their the patio, front porch, whatever.
Sure.
Right? Sitting out there, sitting on their stoop, walking around, you know, but no one sees it. It's bizarre.
But you also talked about how this is somewhat of a rough and tumble area.
Yeah.
At the time, they had a serious problem with crime. The city back then was known for heavy drug use. They had a lot of residents that were, using drugs, especially cocaine and pot.
Yeah. Coke was pretty big, in the 80s, especially towards the end of the 80s, going into the 90s. It was a big, big push.
Gibbs, you also mentioned how the community looked out for one another, and especially for the kids. And really, up to about 6 months prior to Michelle's disappearance, they hadn't had a lot of issues with crimes committed against kids, with kids going missing, things like that in Central Falls and in the surrounding area.
Right.
But that changed. Some months prior to Michelle's disappearance, they started to have some incidents involving children. In Providence, for example, 9-year-old Frankie Barnes went missing while riding his bike in November of 1987. 6-year-old Jason Wolf went missing while checking the mail at his home in Providence. This was a month later, December of 1987.
Just doing normal kid stuff, right? Riding your bike, which every kid loved to do. Or going out and checking it. Like me, I would go out the mail to check to see if the report cards came yet so I can get it out before Mama seen it. Normal kid activity. Shouldn't have to worry about it.
Both Frankie and Jason were later found when police got a tip about a 21-year-old man named William Sarmento. This guy lived in a nearby apartment with his parents.
Yeah.
And tragically, Gibbs, he killed both of these kids by stabbing them multiple times. They also experienced blunt force trauma to the head, and ultimately he threw them both into a nearby pond.
Just discarded them like trash into a pond.
He told the police when they came for him that Satan made him do it and that he hoped the police would kill him because he couldn't figure out why he killed the boys other than Satan wanted him to.
Yeah, he basically told the police, you need to keep all kids away from me. Don't let them near me because if they get near me, I'm going to kill them.
Which I don't think is going to be a problem after the police find out that you murdered 2 boys. You're never going to be within 100 yards of a child ever again.
This, I say kid, but he's 21 years old. He definitely had a lot of issues going on with hearing things, believing things were telling him to do things.
Yeah, he was experiencing some mental health issues.
Absolutely.
There is no doubt about that because ultimately he was found incompetent to stand trial and placed in a mental institution. Then in January of 1988, 10-year-old Christine Cole was walking to a store in Pawtucket. She got some items there at the store for her mom, and then she went to Red's Seafood to buy some clams. She then went to another market to get her mom some milk.
Busy little 10-year-old.
It is.
Yeah.
It's also a situation where a 10-year-old is allowed to travel what sounds to be some distance on her own.
Sure. A few weeks ago, we did an episode on Freeway Phantom in Baltimore, DC area.
Yeah.
And I remember during that time, and it was in the late 70s, early 80s, we were talking about how kids, 7, 8, 9, right, were walking to the store to get things. And to me, it must be those really urban areas.
Well, I think it's just a difference in culture from what you and I experienced growing up to, like you said, what a lot of kids probably experienced and maybe still do experience in a much bigger city.
Yeah.
I would have never been allowed to walk to the grocery store as a 7, 8-year-old. It just wouldn't have happened. But in a big city where the market is just down the block, see, that's the difference. For me to walk to the grocery store in the city that I lived in, there wasn't even a sidewalk.
Yeah.
You're walking down a main drag road with no sidewalk. It's a much different setup in a bigger city.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's built. It's set up for people to walk, buy their groceries, do all those things. An employee at the store where Christine went to get the milk remembered her coming in, told authorities later that it was now dark out. it was also cold. We're talking about January
Yeah.
in Rhode Island. The employee said Christine was not dressed for the cold weather.
You know, even when you think you're just running down to the corner store, right? You know, you probably think, I can get down there, get back, I'll be all right, you know? But doesn't take much for the weather to turn on you.
No, and it doesn't take much for plans to go awry, and you're not prepared. Christine's body was found 54 days later when it washed ashore at a nearby beach. This case stayed cold, Gibbs, for 31 years until authorities hit the jackpot with DNA and they identified the person who sexually assaulted and killed Christine Cole. This didn't happen until very recently, July 2019.
Yeah.
They found this perpetrator living in the town of Central Falls, the same town where Michelle Norris went missing. His name was John Montero. He just happened to be living above one of the stores back then that Christine went into that day. And he saw her.
Start tracking her.
And he started tracking her. Yeah, like you said, something obviously went off in his head.
Yeah.
After seeing this girl that he was going to do something bad to her.
And he followed her until he had the right opportunity to grab her up.
Now, we don't know all the facts because it just came out so recently. I mean, he's awaiting trial right now. So
right.
we don't know all the details of what happened, but police are pretty sure they've got their man.
Yeah.
31 years later. It just goes to show you, man, and I know I've talked about it before, if you're a man or a woman that did something in your early 20s, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and you've been living with that all this time.
Thinking you're safe.
Yeah, thinking, you know what, I won't do it again, but I got away with that. Or maybe you have been doing it. They're going to catch you.
Yeah.
And they're going to give you what you deserve.
Absolutely.
Whatever jury decides that is.
It's coming for you.
Depending on what state you live in. In April of 1988, this is just a month before Michelle Norris went missing. 9-year-old Justin Ellenwood disappeared and was later found dead in a brook near his house. A man named David McLaughlin was charged with Justin's death. David said that he was an associate of Justin's father. He told police that he had been hanging out with Justin's dad that night. They went out together, but then later on in the night, they went their separate ways.
Yeah, they were in the bar playing pool. Justin's dad wanted to go over here. David wanted to go over there. You know, so they, like most guys do, they just go on their own way, say, see you later, man.
But later that same night, David went back to the Ellenwood house to find out that his friend, Justin's dad, as well as Justin's mother, were out of the house. He said that Justin told him that his brother was asleep, but he was hungry. He wanted to go get something to eat. Now, keep in mind, he knows this guy.
Oh, yeah.
This is not a stranger to him.
He's one of his dad's buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gibbs, I look at this as if you came over. My daughter said, you know what? I'm hungry. I don't have anything in the house.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Let's go get something to eat.
You would take her and go get something to eat.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a care in the world.
I'd say, but grab your wallet.
You'd make her pay, but you would definitely drive her to go get something to eat.
Yeah.
That's not what happened in this case.
No, this is a little strange.
He did take Justin with him.
Yeah.
But they didn't go to a restaurant.
No.
They started breaking into some shops.
Yeah.
Some businesses. They even broke into a house.
And one of the places they went to, he broke one of the smaller windows out and, you know, fed Justin through it, you know, to go in there, grab some stuff and come back out.
At some point after committing these burglaries, they ended up near this brook where Justin's body was later found. They got into an argument about something. David said Justin was getting loud. He was getting out of hand and he hit him in the head. Now, he told police it wasn't a hard hit. I didn't hit him that hard.
I just tapped him, man. Just trying to make him settle down, quiet down.
Now, after he hit Justin, he tried to get him up, but he couldn't. Now, keep in mind, they're kind of in this brook, right by this brook. David told authorities that he thought Justin was fine after this hit in the head, and he left him there.
So I'm not going to play this game with you. I'm going to go ahead and go, man. You're fine. Come on. Let's go on home.
But the authorities, and especially the coroner, would later come out and say that this kid was hit so hard that he was knocked out and fell into this brook and drowned. And essentially, David left him there to die. Because Gibbs, there's no way that David's story holds water. Because he said Justin looked fine. There was no way he was fine. He was out cold, and he's in this brook. He can do nothing else but drown.
And I think when it comes down to it, you're the adult. You're with a 9-year-old. You're responsible for that child. Once you decided to leave that house with that child, even though he's not yours, that responsibility falls on you.
I would say I agree, except this is a man that took this young kid to go rob a bunch of businesses and houses.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm not sure that he understood the concept of responsibility. But to leave a kid knocked out in a brook, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
The kid's going to drown. David was ultimately found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. But this is a guy that has been fighting his conviction.
Yeah, I mean, part of it, I read some of it where he's saying, look, why am I responsible for this? He's not my kid. The parents left the kids by themselves anyway.
Which is true.
So why aren't they harboring some of this responsibility?
Because they didn't hit their kids in the head and leave them in a brook to drown.
Exactly. But I think once you remove that 9-year-old without the parents' permission.
Yeah, I mean, what are we talking about here? This guy is so full of it.
Yeah.
Saying, yeah, I did this, but you know what? You should get the parents too. I shouldn't be the only one languishing in prison. In fact, I shouldn't even be here. You should put them in my place because they left their kid at home.
Right.
Well, yeah, they didn't know that one of their friends was going to come over, take their kid to commit a bunch of burglaries, bop him in the head, and leave him in a brook.
Yeah.
They didn't know that. So now we're back to Michelle's case. But I think those cases were important, Gibbs, to summarize, because when you go through the research, it did kind of seem, it's not like there was no crime before this.
Right.
But it did seem as though the area was experiencing a rash.
Sure.
Of children being taken, being killed, being hurt, maybe to a degree that they had not experienced really before.
I mean, when you look at in a 6 months window, 5 kids, including Michelle now, have went missing or worse. When you really never heard anything prior to that, that's, as a parent, as a community, you're like, what's going on here?
Well, it's scary for sure. But let's get back to Michelle's case. Obviously, the family was extremely concerned. You just talked about the concern from the locals related to Michelle's case, sure, but also to all these other cases that we've talked about. The police searched everywhere for Michelle. They talked to everyone they could. They talked to other kids, neighbors, anyone that lived around the school. They even asked the FBI to come in and help. Michelle's body was found just 2 days after she went missing. It was May 30th, 1988, around 6 p.m. She was found by a member of the search team. This is a guy that was training to be a firefighter.
Tell you what, that would be a horrific find.
I do think it's something that would stay with you for the rest of your life. I mean, he did what he was supposed to do, right? That's what he was out there to do, was to help find Michelle. Now, the hope was they would find her alive. She's missing. Maybe she hurt herself. She broke a leg. She can't walk. We'll find her. We'll scoop her up, get her to safety, get her healed, all better.
Yeah.
To be the one to actually find her dead, I think it's something you'd have nightmares about forever.
I would think so.
Maybe not every day, but it would crop up even years and years later. Michelle was found nude, face up, in a wooded lot under some high brush. She was found on a trail used by people fishing on the water behind a beer hall called the Bug Club.
That's a real winner of a club, I'm guessing. The Bug Club?
I think if you're judging by names, you would say no.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, it was about a half mile from the school.
Convenient location.
Next to Michelle's nude body was her pink t-shirt and purple shorts that she had been wearing the day she disappeared. Both of them were folded neatly in a stack.
Just strange to me to, fold them neatly at that point.
It is. I think people that analyze criminals would look at that and say, Gibbs, what does that mean? Now, you and I have talked a lot about people that cover up bodies. I think historically, authorities look at that as somebody that knows the victim, has some level of care for the victim. They want to cover them up.
Yeah.
Why would somebody leave this poor little girl naked, yet take her clothes and fold them neatly in a stack like you would do at home before you put them into your dresser drawer?
Right.
I don't know what that means.
Well, yeah.
You're not showing care necessarily for this little girl. Obviously, if you cared, you wouldn't kill her in the first place, but you know what I mean. You would not want this little girl to be found nude.
Right.
If you had that level of care, that's my thinking.
Yeah, you would have redressed her.
That's my assumption. Now, not every case and not every person follows the norm, but to fold up her clothes, it means something. I just don't know what it means.
Yeah.
The police said that she had been sexually assaulted. She was severely beaten and then suffocated to death. They found bruises, abrasions, and cuts on her body. And one thing that the authorities said, Gibbs, was that she definitely tried to fight off her attacker. She did not go out easy for a 7-year-old child.
Yeah, she put up a fight, man.
Once this got out to the community, there was panic. There was an uproar.
Well, this is one of their own, man. This is one of their own that to them, somebody came into our community, took one of our own and did something so horrendous, so unmentionable.
Yeah, I get it. The other cases were tragic.
Yes.
But they were not in Central Falls.
Yeah.
Right? They were in Pawtucket. 2 were in Providence. You read about them and you say, oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Yeah.
But to have it happen in your little town.
Yeah, your backyard, man.
That does change things. And this had a tremendous effect on the kids in the town. Many of them were shocked. They were so upset. The elementary school brought in psychologists and social workers to help the students. Any students that wanted to talk about the death of their classmate.
Yeah. And that happens today in most schools. Even with the latest shootings in Dayton, the place where you used to work, I work, they brought in people to talk to us if we had an issue with what happened. They wanted to make sure that, we felt okay.
Which, as a business, is a good thing to do. Unfortunately, you see this a lot with school shootings. So Michelle has been found.
Yeah.
They know she was murdered. Police are still investigating it, but now they're investigating it as a known homicide. They went to talk to her father again, and this time he kind of changed his story. He told police that he actually did see Michelle that day at the playground. He told them that he came by to check on the kids. He said when he got there, he found out that the older kids had gone off to the candy store to get some candy. So he decided to take Michelle to the store to let her get some candy. And right off the bat, Gibbs, I have to say that the stuff that this guy says, it just doesn't make much sense. He told the police that he was going to take Michelle to his mom's, but then he remembered that he was going fishing the next day. I don't even know how those two things correlate.
Yeah, so leave her with your mom. Go fishing.
I think the big issue is William claims that he was drunk, which is probably not a hard claim to believe. I think the guy was drunk most of the time. And he said, you know what? Things are fuzzy. But he told police he remembered dropping Michelle back off at the playground 20 minutes after he picked her up. And then, of course, he went on to his favorite bar. Now, as a police officer or a group of police officers, detectives, whoever is doing this interview, red flags have to be shooting from all angles.
Well, sure.
None of this makes any sense.
What he's saying doesn't make sense. The fact that it's different from his initial story when she went missing. The fact that it's different from the story that he told his brother-in-laws. Her uncles went looking for her, went to him, and he's like, I haven't seen her. Well,
what is it?
Yeah. What really happened? Because you keep changing your story.
I think the other thing that police probably had a problem with, and it goes back to us talking about this neighborhood, right? No one saw Michelle. We talked about that. And definitely no one saw her father at the playground, pick her up, take her anywhere, and then bring her back. Now, the one thing he did tell police, I didn't molest her and I didn't kill her. And with that, he basically walked out. He said, you know what? I hope you're done because I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And if you need me, you know where to find me. I've got nothing to hide.
Which sometimes when people say that, it makes you wonder.
Why say it?
Yeah.
Unless you got something to hide. You don't need to make that announcement.
Yeah.
Unless you're trying to throw somebody off because you really do have something to hide.
Yeah.
Hey, Gibbs, I'm an open book and I have nothing to hide, which means I've got a million skeletons in my closet that I don't want you to know about. And I have plenty of things to hide.
Many, many, many things.
So the police go and interview the rest of Michelle's family. They talk to her mom. They talk to her uncles, her grandparents. They're looking at every lead. They're talking to everyone that they can, but nothing is really clicking, right? There's no big lead. Nothing's really going anywhere. The one thing police thought was that whoever did this to Michelle was most likely local and most likely knew her well enough to get her to go somewhere with them.
Yeah, like we said, her being shy, the chances of her just going with a random stranger person was never going to happen.
2 years after her death, the police identified a local resident who they had a strong suspicion killed Michelle. But they could never put enough evidence together to make an arrest. But this was a person of interest. They looked at this person extremely hard. The police have come out over the years with some theories. I think first and foremost, Gibbs, they believe that Michelle was killed somewhere else and then ultimately placed where she was found out in the woods. And it's probably a little bit more than a theory. Debris was found in her lungs that came from an area that they know was someplace other than the woods there where she was found.
Yeah. So knowing that, it could make sense that either someone drove up, someone pulled up in a boat, somebody, whatever, ran the body to and laid it where it was found, and maybe just had the stack of her clothes and laid them down by the body and backed away and left. I mean, it's plausible. I get it. I still don't get the clothes, though, because if I had a dead body and I was bringing to a site to dispose of, why wouldn't I have just gotten rid of the clothes somewhere else? Why continue to bring the clothes and risk
having something on them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, it's in the 80s, and do they really know about DNA transfer?
No, not really in 88. I mean, their DNA is around, but I can't imagine that the average murderer knew anything about it. Most police didn't really even know anything about it. Right. I don't think in 1988. The FBI crime lab did some geologic testing, and they determined that Michelle had inhaled masses of mineral wood insulation type material, fiberglass, and some botanical material. So I think the thought was that she had to have been in some type of building. Maybe it was the beer hall we talked about, an apartment building basement where her dad had lived at the time of her murder, something like that. But this case went cold, and it stayed cold. There are 2 detectives heading up the cold case murder of Michelle Norris, one detective from the Pawtucket Police Department and one from the Central Falls Police Department. Over the years, Michelle's case had some retired investigators running it because, let's face it, some of these cities in Rhode Island went through some lean time.
Yeah.
Over the last 30 some years.
So this goes to show you the dedication that the people had with this case, because even when budget did not allow them to have a full-time investigator on this, the retired investigators stepped in and kept this case going. They never just let it sit.
And they didn't have to do that, right? That wasn't part of their job. These guys were retired.
Yeah.
But they probably said, Gibbs, you know what? This case has haunted us. We cannot allow this investigation to go dormant.
Right.
So I think they really took it upon themselves. The police questioned Michelle's father again in 1999 because at the time he was in custody for failure to pay child support.
He's a champion, man.
Yeah, he's a winner, Gibbs. He owed about $60,000 in back child support. But when they talked to him again in 99, he changed his story again. This time he said Michelle approached him at the playground and said she wanted to spend the night with him at his mom's place, which would be her other grandmother, her paternal grandmother. But as they were walking to his mom's house, he got nervous. He started thinking about the child welfare case, and he turned around.
Because he's a thinker.
Oh, yeah. This guy's a planner, and he's worried about doing the right thing.
Yeah. Imagine that.
I get that sense from the research. So he turned around, he took her back to the playground, and he dropped her off in front of her maternal grandparents' house. I don't think the investigators were buying it. I don't think they had bought anything this guy had said over the years. They started to quiz him further about the day's events, and he got pretty nervous.
Yeah.
He started fidgeting, and then at some point, he demanded an attorney. He just said, you know what? I don't think I can outsmart these guys.
I'm done here. I'm done.
First of all, I'm not that bright. So I shouldn't have tried this to begin with, but now I'm getting myself deeper and deeper. I want an attorney. Now, he didn't say those words, but I'm assuming that's what he was thinking
in his mind. Yeah.
So no further questioning, and he was able to leave once he had addressed the child support issues. Now, I don't know where the guy got the money to pay $60,000 in back child support. Maybe he wasn't required to pay all of it at one time to leave. I don't know.
Maybe some type of settlement agreement.
Or maybe he just had to pay so much and then continue to pay. In 2011, William Norris was living in Florida near the Orlando area. The Central Falls detective, who we mentioned was working Michelle's case, went to Orlando to ask some additional questions of William. He basically restated the same story, but this time he told the detective that he began touching Michelle inappropriately around the time that she was 5 years old. He said that he was drunk a lot. He did some things that he shouldn't have done. He also told the detectives that he really just didn't remember the events of that day, the day she disappeared, because he was drunk.
Yeah, he just had too much to drink and no memory.
I don't think this should be a surprise to anyone that William Norris has pretty much from very early on been a suspect in the disappearance and murder of his daughter. And I think he will continue to be a suspect. He'll be on police radar.
Sure.
For what? Until they solve this case.
I mean, he was the last person to ever see her alive that we know of.
Well, by his own admission.
Right. The third story, fourth story, whatever number of stories, he finally said that. And I think that's the other problem. So many stories of what actually happened that day.
So let me ask you a question, because this is going through my mind. Why all of a sudden in 2011 would this guy admit to molesting his daughter when she was 5 years old, knowing that the detectives are there to question him about his daughter's murder?
Yeah.
Why? What is the reasoning behind it?
Especially knowing back in either the first or second time that they questioned him, he stated, I didn't molest her. I didn't kill her. He said that. So now,
again, that's the I have nothing to hide.
Right.
I get you didn't kill her. Why would you say I didn't molest her?
But now say you did.
Yeah, I didn't get that. It seemed like there was no reason for him to open up about that, unless in his warped way of thinking, admitting that nugget was going to put them off, the detectives, I mean, from continuing to look at him as a suspect in his daughter's murder. I don't know if that makes any sense, but maybe to him it did. Like, I'll disclose this fact. That will make the detectives think, well, he must be telling the truth about not killing her. Why else would he offer up the fact that he molested her?
So just a rabbit hole on this one for me. 2011, DNA common, known about.
Sure.
So could, as much as I don't know if he's that intelligent to figure this out, but knowing that eventually they could somehow tie him to it through DNA, that his way of saying, you know, I did touch her inappropriately. Now this way, if they find his DNA on her, that he can say, well, I told you.
Yeah, I get that. Because he probably doesn't know what they have. And actually, we don't either.
Right.
We don't have a list of everything that they recovered as far as things that could produce a sample. But he doesn't either.
Right.
Maybe he's been reading up on DNA.
Yeah. Maybe he's trying to hedge his.
I think we're giving him way too much credit. I don't think this guy is anywhere near that intelligent. But I could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, I would say this. If he actually had anything to do with it, maybe he's smarter than we think to still be sitting where he is.
But Gibbs, the thing about William Norris is authorities do have his DNA. They have his fingerprints. They have pretty much everything they need to match if they had a good sample to match it against.
Yeah. Because
police looked at him in 2005 for the disappearance of another girl. And that's when they got his DNA. Obviously, they must not have matched him in that case, but some jurisdiction has it. Again, you know, I said that we don't know what they have. My assumption, Gibbs, is they probably don't have much. You know, this was 1988. I'm not sure how good the collection efforts would have been. And I don't know how well whatever they did collect would have held up
over the years,
so that could they even get a viable sample
right
today? I don't know that.
I think we know it could be tough.
It does get tough. We know in a lot of cases that evidence degrades.
Yeah.
And when they finally have the technology to try to use it, it's just not viable. So bottom line, this case remains unsolved, but there have been a lot of cases like this recently, solved through the use of advancements in DNA that people thought not that long ago would never be solved.
So we talked earlier about Christine Cole. She was the 10-year-old that went missing and then was found murdered. And it was 31 years, just this July, that they finally were able to tie the person that did this through DNA to her. I think that Michelle's mom is kind of hopeful that during this trial, that somehow maybe she might get some answers regarding Michelle.
And I think that's one avenue. There is a possibility that this individual could have also had a hand in the death of Michelle Norris. Maybe it comes out. Maybe it's linked through DNA. Obviously, they have his DNA.
Sure.
I think this is one of those cases where, like many, you look at everything and you look at the passage of time and you say, well, it's only going to get tougher from here, right, to solve this case. But the thing is, we're seeing the opposite. Because of the advancements in DNA, they are doing some things that 5 years ago, nobody thought could ever be done.
Right.
I have hope because of that. And it's not like advancements are going to stop. They're going to keep moving forward. They're going to do things in a year or two that today we think are absolutely impossible.
I think it's interesting that if you go back to 1988 and if they would have found the same individual that took Christine Cole's life, I think most people would immediately said he had to do what that person did to Michelle. That has to be him. There's nobody else that would do that. It's the same, right? I don't think people would ever understand how many bad people sit in the same area. I mean, like we talked about the 2 kids in Providence. This 21-year-old kid did horrific stuff, threw their bodies in the pond. I don't think back then we didn't think that way. I think we were pretty narrow on our thought process. I mean, at least I know I would have. I would have said, wow,
there's got to be some connection.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's too close to home. It just makes more sense that way. Today, I don't know.
Part of that is just all the research that you and I do. We're kind of jaded, and I don't think it's a bad thing, to the realization that there is just a bunch of bad people out there. It's not like you have this monster serial killer, most likely,
right,
snatching up all these kids in Rhode Island. Right. Now, I'm not saying that's not possible. It is. We know it is.
Yeah.
But more likely, you have 2, 3, 4 individuals that did something horrific.
And that's, to me, that's the worst part about doing the research, is that it just really sinks in sometimes how bad it is out there.
Yeah, you have to be careful because I think it's easy to lose your faith in humanity.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah,
But that's it, Gibbs. That's the case of Michelle Norris. Again, like we say this all the time, but I hope this one gets solved.
I hope so too.
For her.
It just comes down to how much evidence they have that could yield a good DNA sample.
And then matching it to someone.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, right? It used to be, okay, that person has to be in the database. But now, as they're getting into matching it to family members and then using good old fashioned police work from there to work down to who the killer actually is. We know the killer is somewhere in this big family, but now we've got to narrow it down. That's what they've done in a lot of these cases.
Yeah.
The DNA didn't point to the killer.
No.
It got them in the ballpark, but then they had to find the right seat that this person was sitting in to figure out who it was. So, but that's it. That's the case of Michelle Norris. Gibbs, we got some voicemails. You want to hear those?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, this is John from Liberty, Missouri. Just wanted to say I love the podcast. Actually, TCAT and TCAT Unsolved. Been listening for probably about 3 or 4 months, and I'm hooked. Always looking forward to a new podcast, a couple new ones coming out on Sunday nights. But wanted to turn you guys on to a couple cases that took place in St. Joseph, Missouri, back in the late 70s, early 80s, by a guy named Charles Hatcher, who had kidnapped and killed a couple children. He'd also did some of his devious stuff out in, I think, California. But there's a real good book called St. Joseph's Children, and it covers the case of the 2 abductions and murders in St. Joe. But it's very interesting being from St. Joe, and would love to hear you guys do a podcast on it. So for the time being, keep your own time ticking, and we'll talk to you later.
All right. I'm not sure if somebody was trying to break into his house, Gibbs, as he was leaving the voicemail.
Yeah, something was going on there.
Something was going on. I don't know what it was. Sounded like maybe he was building a deck.
He might have been. He's a
multitasker.
Thanks.
But we appreciate that. And we'll definitely, put that name on the list.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Brandon. I'm from Pittsburgh. Just getting ready to start off on True Crime All the Time Unsolved. I'm still also working on True Crime All the Time, but I have a suggestion for an episode for Unsolved. It's the case of the West Mesa Bone Collector. I've only heard one podcast on it, and I've been listening to True Crime podcasts for about the past 4 years or so. So it'd be very interesting to hear your guys' take on the case, and I'm also a huge fan. My boss yells at me all the time for laughing at Gibby while we're working. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I take it as good. Anyway, you guys have a good day. Keep up the amazing work. Bye.
We'll say, hey, two things real fast. It's always good to laugh with me.
He said laughing at you.
Yeah, with me. And we've done that episode.
We have done that episode. It was one of the very first episodes we ever did.
Yeah.
On Unsolved. I can't remember the number, but I think it was like 2, 3, 4 or something like that.
It was early. So you just have to go out to Stitcher Premium to catch
Yeah, that's the thing. It's so old, it's only available on Stitcher Premium.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Cassidy from Winnipeg, Canada calling. I'm a long-time listener. I love your guys' podcast. I love the chemistry you guys have. You always never fail to make me laugh, but you guys do it in a really respectful way, which I really enjoy. I have 2 recommendations for you for cases, one for an unsolved, one for your just regular True Crime All the Time. For the True Crime All the Time one, my recommendation is Sydney Tierhuis. It's not spelled the way it sounds, so I recommend you guys Google it. It's a crazy, crazy case. It's also based in Winnipeg. It's just insane. Yeah, definitely look it up. And the other one for the Unsolved is also based in Winnipeg, and that's Tina Fontaine. I'd really love to hear you guys talk about some more Canadian cases, and especially the ones that have to do with our Indigenous women. We have a huge Indigenous women's crisis up here. Ones that I'd really like to hear you shed some light on, talk about how the injustices and how many unsolved cases we have with those victims. Thank you very much, and I love you guys. Keep on ticking.
Got a little beep at the end there.
A little beep.
You know, Gibbs, we actually did cover at least one, maybe more cases that involved Indigenous women up in Canada.
I think we did 2, actually.
I think they were older. They were early on, and they're
Right.
probably on Stitcher Premium now. But we haven't actually gone back to Canada in a little while, and we need to do that.
Maybe it's time to do a road trip.
I think so.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Gibby. This is Linda Lumu Gleason. I was a Patreon supporter a while back. Hope to be again soon. I was calling because I tried calling in back then and never got through. Not sure why, but I wanted to say I am Team TCAT all the way. It's not TCAT without you or Gibby. But I hope when you do watch the season of Mindhunters that you will be able to do an episode on their, I guess you'd say, serial killer of choice for this season. So can't wait for the next episode. Love listening to you guys. Thank you. Bye.
All right. So I don't know if I told you this story. Did I already talk about this story where I started Mindhunter? I got through episode 2. I think I was emailing with somebody about it. My wife walked in and said, did I tell you this?
You did.
She said, that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
I was like, it is good. I told you it was great when it first came out. So now I'm going back. So it may be a little while before I get through season 2, but we do have something planned. I don't know if it'll be, something covered on Mindhunter, but we definitely have something big planned for episode 150, and that's coming up very quickly.
Yeah, really soon.
So I haven't made the final decision. I've narrowed it down to about 3 big timers.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
I'll leave it at that.
It's going to be good.
All right, buddy. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.